So here's the deal. You're an artist, you want to make money, and you go to all this trouble to send out an email, maybe an email newsletter, and it bombs, it flops, and you're like, I don't know why. Nobody wants to read it. Nobody's getting into it. Nobody's responding to it. What do? We're going to talk about that and a bunch of other things. If you're an artist and you've got deep questions about what you want to do to sell your art, this is the place to be. We're going to talk about how to make money, how to build your career, and how to market yourself as an artist. So maybe you want to make a little money, maybe you want to make a lot of money, but we're going to talk about all those things. Plus, we're going to talk about other questions you've submitted if we get to them all. One is about SEO. What's that? We'll tell you about that. And blogs. What about newsletters and funnels and pricing and making a living and audiences and branding? Oh man, there's so much we're going to talk about. If you're new here, my name's Eric Rhoads. I'm the founder of several art magazines like Fine Art Connoisseur, Plein Air Magazine, several newsletters, 5 or 6 of them, conferences for artists, retreats for artists, all kinds of things. And I've been working in other industries and consulting with people. So I've helped artists, I've helped galleries, I've helped businesses all over the world, including a couple of major superpower brands. And that is my superpower, helping you with your marketing in the business of art. I've spent my career in marketing, building products, building businesses, and I want to help you. That's why we're here today. So let's get this show officially started.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhoads. Now, here's your host, Eric Rhoads.
Hey there, if you have questions you want to send to me, just drop them in the email, send them to eric@streamlinepublishing.com. All right. And what I'd like to suggest too, if you want to put something in the chat, put it in there and put your comments in the chat too. You know, I oftentimes can't read the chat right away. Sometimes I miss them. Sometimes I get to them. So bear with me on this. It's kind of hard to do this all, do the chat and answer questions, but I know we'll try it. So anyway, also, you know, if you have observations, you know, if like you see something that you would do differently, go ahead and put it in there. Okay, the first question is from Caroline P. It doesn't say where she's from. Caroline, you know, when you guys submit your questions, tell us where you're from. I am just starting to put myself out there, and I feel this constant pressure to brand everything. People say I need a niche, a color, or a color palette. I need a look, but I'm still experimenting and figuring out what I like to paint. How do I market myself when I don't have a defined style yet without coming across as a messy or inconsistent artist? Oh, Caroline, you worry too much. Look, here's the bottom line. You know, a lot of artists, first off, a lot of big brands, you know, they spend tons of money on their graphics and their colors and trying to send the right signal and what it is they're trying to, you know, are they a luxury brand? Are they a fast food brand? You know, if you're fast food, you're going to use bright, garish colors. If you're a luxury brand, you're going to use golds and blacks. If you're a bank, you're going to use greens. You know, there's a lot of different things like that. There's a lot of research to support that. I'm sure you could go into ChatGPT and find out everything you want to know about colors and brands. But the reality is, when you're getting started, your brand is about you, the artist, and what are they looking for when they're looking for brand? Well, first off, most people aren't thinking about the brands of artists, but they automatically do help. So I was watching a podcast or something last night, and it was a branding guy, and he was talking about how brands elevate you in the eyes of the consumer, and or they can elevate you. They can also, what's the word? Take you backwards. You know, you can brand yourself bad just as well as you can brand yourself good, right? Or badly. So the idea is that you really want to kind of be consistent, right? What's important right now is that if somebody's going in and buying a piece of art, they walk into an art gallery, they see 2 pieces of art, they like them both, they respond to them both, they both have exactly the same price, and one of them has your name on it, and one of them has another name on it, which one will they pick? If they do not know the brand names of either artist, they're going to have a hard time. They're going to pick the one that they'll make a tough decision. They're going to pick the one that they ultimately decide looks the best or matches the couch or whatever. But if they know their brands, if it's you against 𝗙𝗵𝘁𝘶𝘶, I'm sorry, baby. 𝗙𝗵𝘁𝘶𝘶's gonna win that battle, and so is Laurie Putnam, and so is a lot of other people, because they have branded themselves over a long period of time. Branding is not only about advertising, and it is a lot about that, but it's about having done shows and press releases and teaching at online conferences or conventions, speaking at certain events. People get to know you, they get to like you, they get to trust you, they get to know your artwork, and they get to know your level of quality. Now, there are brands of artists that I have followed for years who I would have never bought their work 10 years ago. But as I pay closer attention to them, I say, oh, they're really getting good. I would like to own one of those paintings. This is kind of the switch that happens. There are other brands that they never get any better, and so they have branded themselves as a painter or an artist who isn't necessarily very effectively good in their eyes. Now, other people may see you and say, hey, you're fantastic, because it depends on your level of quality, your level of understanding of art, what works, and so on. So I would say, just as a general rule for you, I wouldn't worry, Caroline, about logos or colors. But once you start thinking about those things, once it's time to think about those things, it really depends on who am I chasing. Am I going after affluent people? Am I going after ultra affluent people? There's a difference between how you market a Bentley or a Rolls Royce versus how you market a Ferrari, which is even more expensive, versus how you market a, something else that I can't think of the car brand, something else. Or, are you going to market a BMW or a Yugo or something? Everyone has kind of their hierarchy of the way the quality works. And so if you're going after super rich collectors and you're advertising in Fine Art Connoisseur, then you're going to want to make your brand logo to be, silver and gold, or something that's very elegant, type that's very elegant. If you're going after the Kia customer, then that doesn't matter as much. As a matter of fact, it might turn some people off because they might think, oh, I could never afford this. So those are the things you want to think about eventually. But right now, really, as you're building your brand, it's just about the exposure that you get, the visibility you get, the quality of your paintings, and whether or not people like it and they like you. Sometimes a brand is, there's an artist I know, he's just a nasty, nasty, mean person. And I'm not a gossip. Everybody I know talks to me about how nasty this person is. I never say anything about it because I don't do that. But this artist is branded as a nasty person. And as a result, the galleries don't want to deal with him. The art shows got tired of dealing with him and they don't invite him anymore. The other artists don't want to deal with him because he's mean. So, that's branding. And there's other artists, I can think of artists like they always greet you with a big smile and they're happy to see you and they're interested in you. That's all part of your reputation, which is really your brand is your reputation. Okay. Here we go for another question. And if you've got a question, put them in the chat. And if you want to come on live, just go to, let's see, go to artschool.live/stream. It's real easy. Okay. Now, here's one from Anonymous. Anonymous is saying, by the way, you don't need to be anonymous. There's nothing to be ashamed of, but you can be. Should I bother with SEO or blogging as an artist, or is it just a waste of time compared to social media? Okay, so this is a thing that I talk about all the time, guys. And it's a really serious problem. Here's the deal. I cannot answer that question for you. And you know why? because I don't know what you're trying to accomplish, right? So if you said to me, here's what I'm trying to accomplish, here's the audience I'm trying to go after, here's all the stuff that you need to do, I can then go, yeah, well, you shouldn't bother with this, or you shouldn't bother with that. So what happens is that you guys are oftentimes putting tactics before strategy. And if you do tactics before strategy, you're bound to fail at whatever you're doing, right? Because a tactic is a tool. Think of a tool, a wrench, or think of a socket wrench. A socket wrench is designed for a very specific nut of a very specific size. If you go get a knife and try to take that nut off of there with that knife, you're never going to get it off, right? You might, maybe with a blowtorch, but the idea here is that you need to pick the tools based on the strategy. And so if I don't know your strategy, so I can answer this question in general terms, but the reality is it isn't really possible until I know what you're going to do. You know, should I bother with SEO? SEO is assuming that you're trying to drive people to your website. Search engine optimization, that's what SEO means. And what that basically means is you're trying to get people to discover you on Google, right, or other platforms. And so should you bother with it? If you have a website, and by the way, I'm not big on websites for artists anymore. There's better things. But if you have a website, here's what you have to know. If you do not update it frequently, you'll never get any traffic. And if you want random traffic to discover you, you have to update it frequently. That means changing pages. That means changing stories. That means uploading new artwork. And it means doing something new at least once a week. I have gone to artists' websites. I went to one the other day, and this is what they did back in the early stages of webs. It had a button that said enter. and it's like, wow, I feel like I'm back in 1995, right? So I click on this button, enter, and there's a bunch of stuff. And the artist has not updated that website in 20 years. I promise you. And I go to websites all the time. People say, hey, you ought to do an article on this artist. And so I'll go and look them up on Instagram. That's where I usually go. But sometimes I'll look them up on their website. And websites have not been kept up to date. And it just sends a signal. It says, I don't care about you. I don't care about my marketing. I don't care to be current. And, I can tell that something hasn't been updated oftentimes, because you see something that looks like it's 10 years old. So SEO is very important. Yes, you should bother with it. So what does SEO mean? There are certain keywords. What you want to do is try to find out, you can go to Google Keywords, you Google how to do it. You can go to Google Keywords and put in things about your category, which would be art or painters or artwork or art galleries or whatever. And it will spit out, it'll tell you a list of the top keywords that people are searching for. And then what you want to do is you want to try and incorporate those keywords into your sentences. So if you're writing a story about a particular piece of art and the word art gallery is a big word that comes up, you want to figure out how to get the word art gallery written into that story. Now, Google is on to this idea that people would try to load up their stuff with too many keywords. And if they see too many keywords built into a paragraph, they're just going to blow it off and not send anybody to you. So you got to be pretty careful about that. But SEO is good. Blogging as an artist, I do a blog. It's called Sunday Coffee. I've done it every Sunday consistently, almost every Sunday. Once in a while I miss one, for several years. And I do it because I like to write and I like to share my feelings about certain topics, not always related to art. And and it puts a human face on me. It makes me, it shows another side of me. It makes me vulnerable, right? And so I like it because it's good for me, but it's a lot of work, and I don't recommend it because it's a lot of work. And if you're blogging to get people to come to your websites, there are better ways, like advertising, right? It's a lot easier and a lot ultimately probably a lot more effective. And then, you know, you're talking about social media. I was telling somebody the other day, I have a friend. He does not have a website. He does not do any social media. And yet he does count them, 5 million in sales as an artist every year, $5 million in sales. And it keeps going up. And he does not do any promotion or marketing himself. He has got a strategy that does not involve any of that. So you don't have to do social media. You can do it if you want to, but you got to have a strategy. You got to ask yourself, what am I trying to do? Why do I need people to visit me? What is the sole purpose? What should I be talking about? You can do social media and put hairballs from your cat on there. And well, you know, most of us don't want to see that. And so if you're inconsistent with social media, in other words, if everybody signed on to you because you were posting pretty pictures, and then all of a sudden you're posting hairballs or your meals or whatever, then people are going to leave you pretty quickly. All right, want to come on camera? Just go to artschool.live. All right, and that's /stream. Art School Live. artschool.live/stream. Yes, .live. Okay. Okay. All right, here's Carla. How do I get people to actually sign up for my newsletter? I have a sign up link, but barely anybody uses it. Carla, why would they want to sign up for your newsletter? You know, the majority of artists that I see, it says there's a thing, it says sign up for my newsletter. First off, where you put it matters. How you advertise it matters. Like if it's a little tiny thing on your website, nobody can see it, people are going to pass right by it. You know, you want to make it in your face. But why would I sign up for your newsletter? What's in it for me? Always ask that question. What's in it for me? And there's nothing in it for you unless you can articulate that. If somebody happens onto your website and they like your artwork, and you could say, would you like to be want to be notified about, want to see my artwork first before anybody else sees it, sign up for my newsletter. Boom, now you've got a reason. The other thing is you could have, you know, want a free ebook of my 20 best paintings of all time. When you sign up, you also get my newsletter. Boom, now there's a reason. So now this is a good thing. That's what you want to do. And so that's really important. And while we're talking about newsletters, and I guess we are, you know, newsletters are junk mail. Your newsletter is junk mail. There, I said it. I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend you. My newsletter is junk mail too, by the way. All right? Unless I can make it compelling. So here's the thing. The most important part of your newsletter, let's ask yourself this question. Is it the pictures? Is it the stories? Is it the captions? Put your thoughts into the comments right now. What's the most important part of your newsletter? I'll tell you there's two things. Are you ready for this? Write this down. If you don't already know this, it's pretty simple. You probably know this. Number one thing is from. Who is it from? Okay? Because what do you do when you go through in the morning and you're purging all your junk mail? The first thing you look at is, who's it from? Do I know them? Do I trust them? Is there some reason I should know them? I would recommend putting from Eric Rhoads artist. Oftentimes I put Eric Rhoads Art Publisher or Eric Rhoads Publisher, right? Because they might go, oh, I don't recognize the name Eric Rhoads, but I recognize, oh yeah, he's the publisher of Plein Air Magazine, right? So you want to have something that says, you know, kind of who you are, what you do. The second thing, but actually most important, is the subject line. So the subject line, a lot of people will put 10, 12, 15 words in a subject line. The problem is when you're looking at something on your mobile device, right? And you can fit 4 or 5 words in. So you've got to be able to get the essence of attention getting in 4 or 5 words. So those need to be the 4 or 5 most powerful words you can possibly come up with. and they need to be related to something inside the newsletter. Now, here's the mistake that a lot of people do. A lot of people will put multiple topics into a subject line. They'll say, my newest paintings / my trip to China / my new line of paintbrushes, right? It's like pick one and make it really exciting. You know, if you were to say, the secret to keeping your paintings from cracking, everybody's going to open it up, right? Because they want to know what it is. And what I like for newsletters is I like content that is not always about you. I say this a lot. People ask this question a lot. And if it's always about you, they're going to be bored. But if you can come up with something, and maybe you have a regular article on something like how to take care of your paintings, then, you know, you do the thing on cracking, and then you put your other stuff out there. It draws people in. So keep that in mind. All right. Now, also, you know, make sure that you have a clear sign up link, and it's real easy to get to. You know the drill. If you want to come on live, just go to artschool.live. It's always tough to get people to come on live. Everybody's like, I'm so shy. All right. Anna from Texas. I just finished a new series of paintings and I want to share them online, but I'm afraid of someone stealing my ideas or copying me. How do artists protect their work online? Here's a clue, Anna. It's not possible. All right, get over it. All right, so I'm walking down the street. That's not what you want to hear, and I'll give you a somewhat legal answer here in a second. I'm walking down the street with my buddy, and he's a pretty well-known artist in this area. And we're walking down the street, and we're in this shopping area, and there's an art gallery. We're walking right by this art gallery, and there's a window with a bunch of paintings in it. I said, I didn't know you were in that gallery, so I'm not in there. I said, yeah, you are. I said, there's one of your paintings in the window. He said, that's odd. Let's go in. I said, okay, don't say anything. So we go in, and I said, can you tell me about this artist who's in the window? And he started going into his biography and telling him about him and, you know, what a great artist he is. And he started showing me 10 or 12 other paintings he had on the wall of this artist. And I said, well, I'd like you to meet him. He's my friend. This is him standing here. And he says, oh, well, nice to meet you. I'm really happy to finally meet you. And my friend said, where did you get these paintings? He says, oh, I got them out of this catalog. And he pulled this thick catalog out of paintings that came from China. And every single painting in the catalog, about 50 of them, had been copied from his website. They're hand copying them. You could put a watermark on there, you know, copyright Eric Rhoads, etc. That isn't going to deter somebody who's going to copy your paintings. And by the way, they're copying sculpture now too, which is pretty interesting. And so and maybe they're buying it in 3D, scanning it. I don't know what they're doing, but this is a real problem in a lot of areas. And so it's not really easily preventable. Now, there is a legal answer to that. You should copyright your paintings. You should put a copyright statement on them. You should file it with the copyright office. You got to spend about, I don't know, maybe 25, 35 bucks to do that. But that's going to be tough to pursue. You know, if somebody's copying your paintings in China, you don't have them copyrighted in China. Unless you copyright them in every country, you're copywriting in the United States. It's not going to cover you in those other places. And it's going to be hard to get legal recourse against somebody. So the best thing is just keep going and don't worry about it too much, or else don't put your stuff online or don't put the whole painting online. But, you know, I don't think that's very likely. So I'm going to be doing a segment on Art Business Mastery Day, which is coming up in November. And we got a big surprise about that we're trying to get finalized and then announce. But I have a very capable specialist who is an artist, but also a working attorney in the trademark area. And this artist is going to give us some very specific stuff on copyrights, what you should and shouldn't do. We're going to give you some forms that you can copy. You'll have to adjust them to your state, but that's going to be worthwhile. And that is Art Business Mastery Day. And you can sign up for Art Business Mastery Day by just going to artbizmastery.com. We're going to have a full day of art business instruction, marketing, and all kinds of other things. And it's only like $49 to attend. So it's really a great price. And it's something that will help you get your goals for the year. And that's November 15th, artbizmastery.com. All right. So next we have Diego from New Mexico. Diego says, oh, I remember Diego. That's a great name. My kids used to watch that. What was that? Dora the Explorer. And she was always talking about Diego, her best friend. I love that name. Diego, I'm sure you heard that a lot. Diego from New Mexico, I keep hearing about collector funnels. What does that actually mean in the art world, and how do I create one? I'm not laughing at you. I'm kind of chuckling at the concept. So where do I begin? Where do I begin? So I need a little dream music here, some harp music. Where do I begin? All right, so Diego, there's a thing in marketing circles called a funnel. And the concept of a funnel is that, imagine a funnel, right, like this. And a lot of people come into the funnel. And then as they get closer and closer to the bottom, there are fewer and fewer will go through. And then one goes through the hole, and that's a customer. That's a new customer. So the idea is you're bringing in, let's say for sake of discussion, you're bringing in 100 people, and then you're going to ask them certain questions and try to do certain things. And at the end of that, they're going to be the one customer that comes through. So, you know, funnels work really, really well. And I have them. A lot of people have them. They're very effective for a lot of things. But I'm not so sure that they're necessarily going to be effective for collectors. Now, I'd be curious if somebody knows about collector funnels, put it in the chat. I'd like to know more about it. But here's the thing. Art is not a commodity product. If you're selling something in a funnel, your goal is to get a lot of people into that funnel and hope that some come out the other side. And that has to do with your price. It has to do with your offering. And usually you'll see a lot of funnels that people are selling courses, right? And so they'll offer you a what we call a lead magnet, which is, a free ebook or something. And they get that. And you could do that with your website. But then, they try to sell them something they don't buy that. Then they try to sell them something else. And some people drop out, some buy it, some keep going, some eventually become a customer. And I just don't think for art that it really makes a lot of sense. Now, I may be completely missing the boat here. Somebody may be doing something really effective that I don't know about. But the thing about art is it's very subjective, right? It's not a commodity. It's not something where you can produce 100 of them or 1,000 of them, unless you're doing prints. And that's another story. But, a collector might love, I'm staring at a beautiful piece of sculpture that I bought, which is of a Native American. It's really lovely. It's got kind of a vintage, historic look to it. A lot of people wouldn't like that, right? I happen to resonate with it. So if I don't like it, I'm not going to become a collector. Right. So, people buy what they love first and foremost. And it's emotional purchases. And collector funnels, yes, they tie into your emotions, but I don't think that I would worry about that right now. What you want to do, Diego, is I think the real root of your question is, how do I get more collectors? And the way to get more collectors is to be visible to collectors and to make them desire to own your artwork. And so how do we do that? We just have to look for ways that you can get them to desire to own your artwork. So let's focus on just bringing people in the door, and that's what we want to focus on. Maya in North Carolina, I've sold a few originals and commissions, and I get good feedback on my work. Hey, congratulations. But I don't know how to scale. I don't have time to paint more. I don't have time to paint more, and I can't keep raising prices forever. Why not? I want to turn this into a real business, not just a side income. What would be your first steps if you're trying to go from part-time artist to full-time professional artist in a sustainable way? Well, there's about 1,000 questions in that, and I'll try to unpack those for you if I possibly can, Maya, from North Carolina. First off, you're contradicting yourself here. I've sold a few originals and some commissions, and I get good feedback on my work, but I don't know how to scale. What does that mean? How to scale. Now, to scale in a technical sense means that instead of getting 5 customers, I want 5,000 customers or 50,000 customers. That's scale. How do I get 50,000 people to buy? So there's a philosophy that, you know, every artist is focusing, most artists are focusing on scale, and they shouldn't be focusing on scale, right? The reality is, let's say you're really, really prolific and you sell, and you can paint 2 paintings a month. So that's 24 paintings a year. Maybe you can paint more than that, but let's use that. 2 paintings a month. If you sell 2 paintings a month, how many buyers do you need? The most number of buyers you need is 24. So why do you need 5,000 people to sell 24 paintings? Why do you need 50,000 people to sell 24? Now, here's the other thing. What's the least number of buyers that you need to sell 24 paintings? 1, right? So my number 1 goal is, if I sell somebody a piece of artwork, how do I sell them a second and a third right away? Because that reduces my job. I don't have to resell them. They're already in love with my work. They're already, dopamine is going, they're buying, they're feeling good, and it's a good time to make them want more. So the reality is that you don't need a huge number of people to sell all your paintings. As a matter of fact, I try to get every buyer to buy more than one. I have strategies to do that, and it works very effectively. And sometimes you get lucky. I have somebody that I'm coaching who has sold 24, 25 paintings to one person and basically nailed his year with one purchase. And so there's a lot of different ways to approach this. So it's not always about that. Now, you say, I can't keep raising prices forever. Why not? So here's the deal. Eggs cost more money. They cost more money than they did a year ago. Gas has gone down. That's good. Eggs are starting to go down, but everything's more expensive. And you should have a strategy that includes raising your prices every year just to keep up with normal inflation. And, you know, the last few years, last 3-4 years, you know, inflation was completely out of control. Before that, it was doing great. So what you want to do is always be willing to raise your prices, because prices matter. You need to get paid what you're worth. And the reality is, think about this. If you sell something, I'm just going to use real low, easy numbers. If your cost of living is $100 and you're getting paid $100 that pays your bills, you don't have anything left over. Now your cost of living goes up to $120, but you're still paying, people are paying $100 for your painting. Now you're losing $20. So that's the reason you should raise your prices every year. And as you get more popular, more well-known, you can continue to raise your prices, and sometimes you can get them up really, really high. All right. So you say, I want to turn this into a real business. If you want it to be a real business and not a side income, that's the best way to do it, is you want to have a system for raising your prices, a system for inventory control, so that when you start running out of inventory, you can raise your prices. So my first steps would be, if you want to go from working another job, then what you want to do is get used to selling things, sell a lot of it, start promoting, start advertising, start branding yourself, get to the point where you're selling consistently a lot of paintings. And then once you've proven that and you can do it for 2 or 3 years, maybe even 1 year, then, okay, get it to the point where you're making the same amount of money, and then quit your job or reduce your job, you know, go from full-time to part-time, whatever. All right, here's another one. I am going to have a hard time pronouncing this, so forgive me. Arjun from London. Welcome, Arjun. Got a lot of people in the UK who are watching this program. How do you balance creating personal, expressive work with making art that sells? I don't want to become a product machine, but I also need to make a living. Okay, so we talked about this a lot, Arjun. And so here's a couple of ways to think about this. Which would you rather do? Would you rather paint, or would you rather go clean ashtrays to make that extra money, to make up what you need to do? and I don't want to clean ashtrays. I'd rather paint. So if it comes down to personal expression or making a living, I'm going to start out by going for my base income. I'm not going to clean ashtrays. I'm going to sell whatever's going to sell. Now, I get to a point in my career, and I've been to this point, where I had to say to an art gallery who was calling me, say, you know, those little red barns, they really sell really well. Send us 30 more of those. And I had to say, you know, I respectfully decline. I'm sick of painting little red barns. I'm done with little red barns. I'm going to paint something else, and let's hope it sells. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you latch onto something that sells really well. I had one painting series that I sold a lot of, but I don't ever want to do it again. But so you're just going to have to manage that. But, you know, if it came down, if I had to make my living as a full-time artist, which I don't have to do, thankfully, in this particular case, then I'm going to figure out what sells. My friend Roger Rossi, who is a brilliant man, a really terrific artist, heavily involved in the Salmagundi Club in New York. Roger went into this art gallery and introduced himself and showed him some of his work and so on. And they said, hey, we'd like to put you in the art gallery. And he smartly said, because he's a brilliant man, he said to them, what do you think would really sell well here? And the gallery person said, well, you know, we're in the Hamptons. And so I think scenes in the Hamptons, and because Roger's a flower painter, they said, you know, gardens in the Hamptons. So when he left there, he went around, he took pictures of gardens in the Hamptons, and then he sent them a bunch of garden paintings. He sold 11 paintings the first month because he was doing what they wanted, and they sold really well. And what that did is that gave him the ability to have artistic freedom to do other things. He happened to love what he was painting. He happened to love painting gardens. And as a result, he was happy. But if I were in that situation, I'd paint the gardens to make the money, and then I would go do abstract expressionism or whatever, you know, to make me happy. I paint things that I love, and I try to paint what I love all the time. And if you can get to that point, you will. You'll get to the point where your work will be so good and so popular that people will buy whatever you have to offer. But, you know, if you want to do something crazy once in a while, do it for yourself. And, you know, you do need to make a living. I get it. All right, next up, this person is very famous. It's a name we hear a lot. Her name is Anonymous. Anonymous says, I've been painting for 5 years and I want to start teaching online, but I'm not sure how to market myself as a teacher when I've mostly just sold originals. How do I position myself and find students? All right, I got a bone to pick here, Anonymous. Let me take a glass of water. All right, here's the deal. Why do you want to start teaching online? I have a lot of friends who teach online, a lot of them. And here's what I get most of the time. One woman that I talked to recently said, I did it during COVID to survive, and I made some pretty decent money with it. But here's what happened. I ended up being an online teacher, and I wasn't painting, and I wasn't focusing on my art career, and it completely has derailed me, and I regret it. And I'm going to, as soon as this season is up, I'm going to stop doing it forever. And even though, you know, it's nice to have a little extra money, she said also, and well, actually, she didn't say this. Another artist told me, he said, I have figured out that with my online teaching, I'm making about $1 an hour because of all the planning and all the emails and all of the other stuff that I have to deal with. I'm not making any money, and I'm not focusing on my work. Here's the deal, guys. All right. Everybody gets seduced because they see what everybody else is doing and they think, oh, that's really nice. It's like the Got Milk campaign. Everybody started doing Got Milk style ads, which was, by the way, it was a bomb campaign, and it was for a specific, it was designed to bring attention to a business that was being sold. It had nothing to do with selling product, but everybody's doing it. Anyway, you start seeing all these people teaching online. You go, oh, gee, I'd like to do that. It's a lot of work. You got to learn technology. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into. If you're an artist, you need to be singularly focused on one thing and one thing only. This is a giant problem. So here's the thing. If you've got 5 things that you're doing and you have 5 resource points, right? So you're doing teaching online and it's taking 1 resource point, and you're doing painting and it's teaching 1 resource point, and you're doing critiques and that's 1 resource point, and so on. So you're using up all your points. But what if you took all 5 of those resource points and you focused those points just on marketing your art and selling your art and doing what you love? You're going to be 10 times more effective and more successful. So be careful what you ask yourself for. I know this stuff. I know I produce videos. It costs me fortunes to produce these videos. I had another artist who said to me, I started producing my own videos. He actually came to us after producing his own videos. He said, I'll never do it again. He said, I spent a year of my life not painting, but editing. I thought it was going to be a breeze. It took me forever. And so, next time he came to us, we shot it, edited it, it was a good thing for him. So be careful about what you get seduced by, because those things all take time. There's nothing more important than the power of focus, right? Focus, think of a laser beam just burning through something. So here's the deal, right? So you take a sledgehammer and you go up and you say, I'm going to knock down this wall, and you get boom, or maybe a small hammer, you knock down this wall and you get all these little holes. And you're all over the wall and nothing's happening with the wall. If you take that same hammer and you concentrate on one area, next thing you know, you've got a big hole and you're knocking down the wall. That's the power of focus. And so really be focused on focus, right? Now, I have a lot of things in my business. I have conventions, I have art videos, I have retreats, I have trips, I have a lot of things. But if I had done that when I first started my business, I'd have been out of business. I only did that when I got one successful, I added something else. And I got that successful, I added something else. And I have somebody who's responsible for each of those pieces, because otherwise I'd kill everybody. And I keep adding more and more things. That's going to kill you. You got to be really careful about that. Be careful. Be careful. Layla in Charleston, North Carolina. Do I need a logo and a branding as an artist, or can I just use my name and my art? Yep, you can. We talked about that at the top of the program. You don't need all that. I mean, the reality is, people just need to know your name. Another bone to pick. All right, here's the deal. You have a signature and you've fallen in love with your signature, and you sign your paintings with your signature, and your logo becomes your signature and nobody can read it. I go to websites all the time and I can't read their signature. If you're going to put a signature, at least put your name under that. I think I saw one the other day and it had the signature and then it said the artist's name. That's cool if you want to do that. But if your brand is just your signature, you're driving people away. All right, here's Jonathan from Belgium. I feel like I'm stuck between 2 audiences, collectors and other artists. My content does well with other painters, but they don't buy. Should I shift how I post? Yes. Okay, so focus, right? We just talked about focus. You have to ask yourself a couple questions. If I'm on social media, since you asked the question about posting, what is better? Do I focus on collectors or do I focus on artists? I want other artists to see my work and see how good I am. Oh, that's good. Is it going to sell any paintings? No, not unless you have strategy for selling to artists. By the way, artists do buy a lot of paintings. We did a survey at the Plein Air Convention one year. We asked everybody to hold up their hand if they bought one painting, original painting from some other artist paid for, not traded, in the last year. Every hand went up. I said, how many bought 2? Every hand stayed up. How many bought 3? Most hands stayed up. They started going down as you got to 5. Artists buy a lot of paintings. So you might have a strategy for artists, because artists love paintings, especially if like if you're Jeremy Lipking, and you watched him paint that at a demo or something, you want to own it so you can remember it. All right. So here's the thing though. If you want to have collectors on your Instagram, then focus on things that collectors are going to see and hear. Artists want different things, right? So artists want to see process or progress or, things like that. Artists, they also want to see finished paintings. Collectors want to see finished paintings. Your wording, your headlines, everything should be focused on collectors. Talk to them specifically. That'll make a big difference. And make sure you let them know that everything is for sale. You can find subtle, nice ways to do it without sounding tacky, but you do need to make sure they know, because don't assume they do. They don't. They're not assuming that. They're scrolling by at 100 miles an hour. They see a painting, they stop, they go, oh, I like that. And then they start to scroll again. It says, this painting is available for sale. Oh, I've sold paintings that way. So I would shift how you post. Okay, I think we're running low on time here. I think I've got another one, and then we'll probably, one more. Tamara A. I've grown my email list to 1,500 people. Congratulations. But the open rates are dropping and barely anyone clicks anymore. It happens. How do I bring life back to my newsletter? Okay, well, listen to the earlier part of this program where I talked about newsletters and subject lines. Look, the issue is that there's a thing called attrition. Attrition means that, let's say you have 100 followers on your email list, and in the next month you have 90, and the next month you have 80, and the next month you have 70, because people drop off, right? Some people stay, but some people drop off because they're not interested anymore. Unless you're fishing and bringing new people in, if you know you're going to lose 10 every month, you're going to lose 10% every year for sure. So if you know you're going to lose 10% of your list every year, you have to replace 10% of your list every year with new people. That means you got to be out there aggressively getting new people to come to you. So open rates are about subject lines, and or you've proven to them that there's nothing of any interest inside and they're not going to open anymore. They may be open the first couple of times. They're like, this is boring. I don't like this. I don't like the art, whatever it is. They're not going to come back. So you got to bring new people into it. That's how you bring life to your newsletter. Make the content interesting and valuable, and that will make a big difference. Okay, so that's today's Art Marketing Monday. We have a free gift for you, our free, incredible 97 art secrets from the world's leading artists. Just go to 97artsecrets.com/ASL to get yours for free. 97artsecrets.com/ASL. We have a big thing coming up in November called Art Business Mastery. I alluded to it earlier. It is a full day on November 15th, teaching you a lot about art and art business with some leading guests who will be announced soon. You want to get booked before they get announced, so you be sure to get a good seat. It's online, so you get the best seat in the house anyway, but you want to make sure that you're not locked out. We sell out. There is a possibility of that because we only have so many streaming slots available to us. So we had thousands of people last year, and a lot of people crushed it this year because they went. You want to crush it this year, go to Art Business Mastery. It's just artbizmastery.com. I'm going to be doing Gouache Live. I'm going to be hosting Gouache Live August 23rd on a Saturday, and some of the world's leading gouache artists. Gouache is hot. You want to come to that, just check it out at gouachelive.com. And last but not least, you need to come paint with me. We're going to have a ball. We're going to paint for a week. We're going to be outdoors painting in beautiful Door County, Wisconsin. It's called Fall Color Week. I do it every year. It's in a different place every year. This year is spectacularly beautiful and colorful, and lots to paint, lots of lighthouses, lots of rocky shores, and it's a really beautiful location. I'm told one of the most beautiful locations in America. So come paint with us in Door County, Wisconsin. It's 4 hours north of Chicago. You can drive from a lot of places in the country, and it's not too far from a major airport. So a whole week, September 28th through October 5th. That's fallcolorweek.com. I see people in the comments. Yeah, you're coming. That's good. We love it. We're here every weekday at 12 noon on Marketing Mondays as part of Art School Live. When we're Art School Live, we do Feedback Fridays and Art School art training in the middle of the week. And we started doing something interesting and new on Feedback Fridays, so make sure you come and check it out. Okay, I'm Eric Rhoads. Be sure to subscribe to this program. We would love it if you do. just go to YouTube and hit the subscribe button. You may be watching on another platform, but make sure you get at least a subscription on YouTube. And thank you to the 18 million plus people who have tuned in, who are learning from us. We really appreciate it. God bless. Good night or good day. Goodbye.